Hi everyone, I hear that everything is working fine. I see my presentation, everything is cool. So again, hi everyone. It's crazy that I'm here. I used to attend this conference yearly, and now instead of just attending, I'm also speaking. And to such a big crowd of 5,000 people, this is like crazy. No, you don't really have to look around and just trust me. I'm saying that for the camera. I mean, they won't know, right? I can tell them literally anything I want. So, I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about walking the fine line between intuition and insight. Why did I take this kind of subject? Well, for the past couple of years, I've done a lot of recruiting, like a ridiculous amount of recruiting. And I would say that this thing is one of the 4 main reasons why designers, both young and a little older in terms of experience, get pushed out of the process. Just so we're clear, to manage expectations, I will not give you any tools. I will not give you any frameworks, any workshops, anything that you can actually take from here and use later. All I want to do is build some kind of awareness. Awareness that each of you should, especially the designers, but not only, should work on finding that middle ground for you individually in terms of being somewhere in between that intuition and insight. So who am I? Because I didn't introduce myself. My name is Karpisz. Like it was mentioned, and this traditional slide with the many logos should show you that I've been around. I've worked in big corporations. I don't think there's a bigger, more scary corporation than Amazon. I've also worked with agencies, with startups, with software houses. Also, like it was mentioned, I teach and lead UX and UI bootcamps and courses. And I did have a lot of different titles along the way, from purely visual, more on the artistic kind of side, to pure product UX and UI, and a little management here and there. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this a little bit to brag, but mostly I kind of want you to know that I've seen a lot of things. I have the experience, and usually by experience I mean I screwed up a lot of things, and the best way we learn is by screwing up, but it's easier when we learn from other people's screw-ups. Also, like a cheap shot, I want to give a shout out to Goody Labs, which I'm gonna be joining 2 weeks from now. Really cool people, although I didn't meet them yet, but it's a product design and software house company, and yeah, it's gonna be fun. Okay, so I think we need to start with the basics, the elemental things, because I'm gonna be using the same words over and over, so a short dictionary. What is insight? Insight is what we, especially the designers on here, it's the way we are taught to work, which basically means that we as designers gather data, gather research, observe the users, and based on that, we're making our decisions. Decisions on how the design would work, how the design will look, and what kind of things we need to do in the future. It's usually very, I would say, well, it's not ambiguous. The idea is that if there are 2 designers and they have the same 2 sets of data, they should produce the same kind of design, which is, of course, not true, and this doesn't happen in practical sense. Now, the intuition is kind of on the opposite side. Intuition is what we internalized along our experience, what we learned. We built some kind of foundation of knowledge. We saw things, or very often horrible things, and we learned from them. We learned what are the basic design principles that's been around for, if not tens, then even hundreds of years. And from that, we can maybe even instinctively lead our designs towards the problem solving, or lead our designs towards something that is our goal. And they seem like polar opposites, like things that are completely opposite of each other, but that is not true because they do overlap in many ways. For instance, the insight we build, so the research that we find, later on it becomes our experience, it becomes knowledge if we know that this is the correct way to do things, or it's, we found something interesting, we know we can reuse it, so that slowly becomes intuition. After the 5th, 6th, 7th time, we're not doing the same research again because we can kind of predict what kind of information we're going to get, of course, based on the context. Now, this is me 8 years ago. A lot younger, a lot more naive, a lot fatter, and that was exactly the moment I've moved from graphic design, so branding, posters, marketing, events, branding, things like that, towards UX and UI. And I absolutely fell in love. I had like ridiculous luck because I just basically fell into Amazon and their UX UI position just because someone told me that, hey, I heard that he was working for Amazon, and he said, like, yeah, I heard in our cafeteria that one of the designers said that there's a position opening and they're looking for someone, so I just applied and got in. And I absolutely fell in love because Amazon had a really good process back then. And again, this is 8 years ago. The design process wasn't such a big and popular thing. So back then, I was completely flabbergasted on how cool it could be, on how structured design could be, in complete opposite of the design and more kind of artistic, creative approach. And I've always been a geek, someone who's definitely more on the logical, on the process side. And I hated painting, and I hated drawing. I had it a lot during my studies, but, well, I sucked at it, so I think that was like one of the reasons I hated it. But I kind of also couldn't like talk about things like what kind of emotions, specific colors induce, and things like that. It always sounded like bullshit to me, so I kind of wanted to find a design niche that would be a lot more like physics, mathematics, things like that I was hyped on, and yeah, that was the UX UI part. I definitely didn't want to become this kind of thing. I know a lot of artists that kind of went that way, and don't get me wrong, I don't want this to be like kind of a diss for artists in general. They are very important, and I love the proper art. Just I didn't want to be the person doing things like that. I wanted to know that when I design something, when I create something, it's something that's going to be used, it's going to be good, and it's not going to be as subjective as it often is. So I found the religion called design process. Most of the cult, you're part of the cult. Yeah, it was somewhere around that time that everyone started creating new design processes. There's like 2 billion results now at Google. Every company wants their own design process, and everyone wants to brand, and people create awesome charts and different ways of adapting. To be honest, mostly very similar rules, but everyone wants their own, and of course I have my own and I use it. And yeah, and again, this is not a diss for the design process because it works, right? We've all probably, or most of us, been through that. We went through some kind of design process. We've created something interesting, and it worked, and it's somewhere now in either web or app space. It has to be structured like that. But there are negative sides to it, and to blindly follow a design process, or to what happens with many designers is to become afraid or paralyzed when we can't do the proper design process. Well, that is a big problem, and that is something that will really slow down your progress in terms of your career. I prefer showing examples on actual projects, so I'm going to just show you something around the design process and then how it could have worked and how it will work, because real-life examples are usually a better way of illustrating specific terms. This is Karpisz, one of the startups I worked with. Very cool place, very cool company. Well, it was a cool company. It died like half a year ago around. I mean, it's still kind of struggling, but the best people got laid off, me also. And this was a feature. I'm going to focus on features because we don't have time to discuss whole apps. So this is a feature called knowledge base, a small library of information for people who are relocating from one country to another, usually around a company, but not necessarily. There's a lot of knowledge to be handled there. They usually have their own support manager, support service, so someone who's going to answer the question, etc. But that's not scalable, right? I mean, you can't, as the user group grows, you can't keep employing new and more customer service people. So there was a big push on self-service. So this is a knowledge base, basically a big library of information that the user can find themselves. On the right side, you can see one example of like a post that is that handles that kind of information. And on that, users spend like around 1 to 1.5 seconds on that post before they left it. Of course, we didn't have only people who did like Olympic level speed reading. People just saw this kind of post and left. And our job was to, okay, we need to quickly find a way to empower those users so they can go through, gather that information themselves. So normally, what would happen, this is the design process, like a very basic kind of chart, and we start with discover, definition, research, then we do the design, which is like ideation, prototyping, and then it goes on to the development. And then iteration, and of course, yeah, it's exactly like the same rules and as all of those other systems. So if we would just start with the first kind of elements to go through in terms of that knowledge base, what we would do, probably, and I'm just like throwing out ideas, probably we would start with a workshop. Designers love workshops, and they bring a lot of information pretty quick, so that would definitely be the first step to get like an overall sense of what we know, what we don't know. Then, again, somewhere in the background, someone's going to create some personas. We're going to do benchmarking for the next couple of days just to see what's out there and then set some kind of goals that we need to meet. Again, there's going to be like a journey map probably somewhere in there that no one's never going to actually go through. Then I get another workshop to kind of refine what we found and then plan next steps. Then we do a PRD, which I actually love PRDs, which are product requirements documents. They're like a must-have for anything. Like from a small feature to a whole redesign of an app, they always should be there. So we create that goes out. People like read through it, hopefully. Then we go to to do some more research. In this case, I would do some competitor analysis, see how others did it, do some data, check what we have in Mixpanel or analytics, whatever is available, and then go to in-depth interviews, which I really don't like, but they are a must-have. I mean, I just personally don't like them. I'm a very introvert, so I'm critically introverted, and then just having those 5 talks a day is just draining all the energy. But that's going to be like a week or two because people tend to like either not sign up or sign up and then don't show. And even in worst cases, they actually show. So it's a whole process. And then another PRD. So after those 4 weeks, I would say we can go into ideation, do some, like put that first line in Figma. I mean, 4 weeks is a lot of time, and as we know, in IT, time means money. So there has to be another approach, or definitely in a startup, there should be another approach. And the easiest way to do it is just to look at it. I mean, just look at this thing that was created by someone, no one knew actually who, because it was like something very, very far in the back created. I mean, most designers know, right, how typography works, how people read, how we get new information. We know this. We don't have to ask them. We don't have to do research about this. These kind of rules will have been around for hundreds of years at this point. And we know how basic, like how hiding content or how navigating through an article should work because bigger, better companies already did that kind of research. I mean, there is literally no information architecture here. This looks and feels random. No user is able to navigate at any point. So instead of going through that previous whole process, what we can do is just sit down, use that intuition, draw a couple of sketches, get some feedback. So other people who are going to be, as usually it works like that, a feedback loop that you're going to get to feel of their intuition, what they kind of see and feel. Then we're gonna, at the end of first week, we're gonna get HiFi designs, do a prototype, get someone from the corridor, sit them down, make them click through it, hand off, and developers did it in, I think, 3 days. So a very, very small amount of points, just to create the proof of concept, something we can push out, say, okay, let's see what happens. I mean, we're not going to break it, right? We do this small thing. So the right thing is what was created in the end, and it immediately boosted kind of both exploration and the amount of time the users spent on specific articles, who also were redesigned, more aligned, the typical typography and proper information architecture style. And yeah, of course, after that comes iteration, and this is a whole thing, like it grew a lot more things happened, but the first intuition and just doing it in 2 weeks and being able to push it out to user and yeah, get a lot of good feedback and then do it properly instead of going through a very slow, very costly process to get the results that we basically already knew they're gonna happen. And this is possible because we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're crazy lucky to live in this time, and in the time where everything is available, when you can buy normal Nielsen reports, when you can see actual research already being posted just to, by a company to get some likes, and you can use that knowledge, and we should use that knowledge because it's ridiculous to kick in the door that's already been opened by someone else, and then you very often better than us because they already did it a long time ago, so they could refine it and then put in a lot more time than we'll actually have. And we as designers should never limit ourselves only to what we do. That's another problem in recruitment, that if you are a UI designer, you should not focus only on the visual part. We should expand the horizons a lot further, like from industrial design to paintings to architecture. All of that is based on very similar, like if you can design, Massimo Vignelli said it, if you can design one thing, you can design everything. So that's something we should keep building all of the time. But, so intuition is awesome, right? I mean, it saves a lot of time, a lot of work. We all should kind of try to incorporate it more. But I'm not here to sell you on intuition. I'm here to tell you about finding a balance somewhere in between. So a quicker case study on kind of working on the other side. This is called Wusul. It's part of the Karim app, and it's a very cool feature that was added to Karim because the Saudi Arabian government wanted to kind of empower women to work. So they said, we're going to cover 80% of your travel expenses to work and back. Basically, the only restriction was that the woman would have to have the location either of pickup or drop-off to be in their registered workplace. And yeah, the government pays 80% of that. So basically, the functionality is the same as Uber. I mean, Karim is owned by Uber, so it's literally like the same flows, same processes, etc. And the user can get 80% off. The whole design is very simple, right? It's a small thing, small widget on the super app, then you go through exactly the same process, and like in Uber, the captain is called, the captain is the driver, that's their nomenclature, I don't know why. And then they just get picked up, and the 80% is just already subtracted. Yeah, so at Karim, there's no making fun with playing with intuition. There is a process. You need to go, you need to do reviews, you need to show the data, and then show how it all kind of fits and works. And the end result was that less than 7% of eligible users have actually taken the ride. So that is a big problem, especially since this is in cooperation with the government. So you can imagine that the shadow that loomed over me during that part, was pretty scary, and there was a lot of pressure for this to work. So of course, at this point, there's no place for intuition. You can't kind of feel like what could have happened. You need to dive deep into the data, and the data was available. Again, big corporation, and then we kind of got how to look for the problem. The problem was that actually 45% of users hailed the ride, so basically did order it, but did not take it. And so then we went to talking to users. So again, those very fun, in-depth interviews. And from that, we learned something, well, very weird. At the drop-off, what is happening at the last stage, when the captain is ready and is on the way. A call happens. The captain, so the driver calls the person who ordered and asks, is it a wusul ride? The person says yes, the captain hangs up and cancels the ride. Some of you already might think that, like, why is this happening? And at this point, I think I've been working at Careem for about a year, so I already saw a lot of things like this happening, especially in Saudi Arabia. But yeah, some of you probably are feeling the anger, the frustration that these assholes don't want to pick them up because either they're against women working or they're against just driving women anywhere and being with the car with them. So yeah, my first idea was to let's punish them. Let's I don't know, get kicked, like a cut of their bonuses or less, pay them less. Then the information, what came back to me was that there is no way we can do this because there is a very small amount of actual captains available in Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of limitations on who can drive there, and basically only actual citizens of Saudi Arabia can be drivers. And citizens of Saudi Arabia are pretty well off, so they usually have a normal job, and the captain, the Careem thing is just a side gig to get some money in the pocket. And like during those talks, and there was absolutely no way we can deter anyone from being still a captain. We basically have our hands tied. The frustration just grew. But I found something, and I don't have it, and I'm very sorry that I kind of lost it. A small chart that showed me that at the start of the month, there is a very small number of drivers. And at the end of the month, the number of available drivers grows like 5 or 6 times. And I wonder why. And so I asked someone who was local, and they said, oh yeah, it's because at the start of the month, they get their paycheck, so they don't really need to drive Careem. As the month progresses, the money goes away. They want just to have some pocket money to go out at the evening and with friends. I mean, not drink because they don't drink, so I have no idea how they meet other people, but they do kind of go out and use that money. And that happened to be the reason why they're calling off the wusul rides. Because the wusul rides are done by bank transfers. And bank transfers there take around a week. And they want that money in the pocket now. Culturally, they are a very money-based, still cash-based economy. So they do call other users that have selected like a bank transfer or a card payment. And they ask them, hey, can we change this to just cash? And usually they say yes, but it's not possible in that wusul. So I got really frustrated over nothing, and that intuition that I had was definitely wrong. And yeah, there was a fix, but I definitely don't have the time to describe it later. The main thing that I want to kind of show is that it's not picking one or the other. It's not you picking, you're either using that intuition to guide your process, or you're like 100% into everything has to be in its place and then planned and then based on data. It is always a balance, because in both worlds there are good sides and bad sides. And if we kind of don't make it, we don't find that balance, it's gonna be, well, you're gonna lose a lot of the good sides. So quickly, to go around when we use insight and when we use intuition. Sorry, something blocked. Just to go very quickly through it. Definitely insight, like any complex scenario, any big product, any complex situation you're facing, yeah, that's gonna be based on data, and has to be, because you can't really trust intuition that much to handle like big complex problems, or like having a lot of problems at once. Of course, user-centered validation, so each time we kind of want to understand what are the users actually doing, we can't use our intuition because that's very subjective. We don't get real valuable data. Anything that is long-term planned, because again, it has to be based on like previous plans or real data that will help us do like a proper roadmap for the next month or two. For every iteration, I would say, has to be data-based. So that's when we get the best insight. When we go through the process, exactly like in PerchPick, when we push even something that was based purely on intuition and just seeing, yeah, I'm going to design this like that. When it goes out, then the data comes. Then you observe and you go back and do the iteration only when you definitely defined what kind of problems or what kind of possibilities appeared during that time. And mitigating risks. And I think this is like the biggest thing, because like that PerchPick situation, if I would screw it up like very badly, like we would start losing users. At that time, I think we had like 300 active users. I would literally call them up individually and explain what happened and say, I'm sorry. But if you're working at Amazon and your decisions or your intuition drops the sales by, I don't know, 0.2%, yeah, those are millions going out the window, and you're going to get strapped to one of those Bezos rockets and then sent into space. So when the risks are high, that's definitely not the space when like intuition should take place. When it comes to intuition, one of the biggest things and kind of things I miss is that design sensibility. So I think we're kind of losing that when we're also data-driven and then pushing for more designing around like strict rules. Is that all design should have something of you in it, some kind of your idea, sensibilities, vibes, something like that. We're missing that. We're not having as much that kind of creative outputs as we used to, or as we have in other design spaces. And I know not all other design spaces aren't the same, but even in Bauhaus, which I love, they always like very much pushed and thought, yeah, function comes first, but the form is still very important, and they did design a lot based on their opinions and then their personal styles. Finding the data gaps. If you're in a company that doesn't have any data gaps and you have enough money to always do the proper research, well, hooray for you, but that's not what usually happens in the industry. There are always gaps. There are always things we don't know and don't have the time or the possibility to kind of figure out. So all we have to do is to, use our intuition to fill in those gaps. Navigating innovation, which is usually the best way to find some new possibilities and then create something new in the space we're creating. Like, it's good to trust that intuition and kind of go after it. And of course, time-sensitive situations like that PerchPick one, usually most startup things will have, in terms of like new things or new features, will have a very time-sensitive, because it's always an investment, right? Only big companies have the money to put months of work into something that might not pay out. Yeah, I'm going to skip this because it's about like our subconscious is really good at problem solving, and I really would suggest you kind of read and then kind of believe it a little more, that we do have like a good ability of instinctive problem solving, again, if it's not a complex scenario. So yeah, follow that. And embracing the human element, which is basically your empathy. I mean, there's no data that's going to help you with real empathy, and putting that human element is still in those designs. Minute and a half. So the how we can do this, how we can better like find that balance. And these are simple ideas that many of you probably already have in your organizations, which are iterative design cycles. Again, each time when we do something like that, there is a space in those cycles on where to put the data at the end, when we actually can gather some new information, and where to use that insight to shorten the route to that data at the end. Designers love workshops, right? And when we get all in one room, there's a beautiful clash of different intuitions and all of that insight that is coming from other people. So that is a beautiful place that builds that balance between intuition and insight. All designers should know the design principles that are out there, like from the heuristics to like Gestalt and like basics of color theory, balance, rhythm, etc. Those should be the fundamental elements of our intuition and then the things that we learn at the start. Feedback loops, just to say, get yourself out there, show other people what you're doing and how you're doing it. I mean, this is a giant problem for me. I keep hiding everything I do, or I just don't have the bravado to show it to other people. But it's a great way to sometimes get insights from other people, but also kind of get a vibe for their intuition and how they see in a 5-minute kind of review of your design. I'm like 100% sure at some point in your career you've seen someone showed you their design and you look at it and then you think, yeah, it's shit, but you don't know why it's shit yet. What did you, either after some proper audit, you kind of found the spaces that it kind of broke. In terms of constant learning, we already know we need to learn all the time because that's the job. There's no other way to be a designer. It doesn't matter if a product designer or if you design like physical things or an architect. Constant learning is a must-have, and that builds that knowledge that is then part of both the intuition and it is a piece of insight. But if you take anything from this, what I'm saying is that trust yourself. Kind of find that space to trust yourself, to when you have that first vibe, that information, and you feel something. And you think, no, I need to, I'm afraid, I need to find the data to really cover it. No, trust yourself. But then also always verify. Don't trust yourself too much. So, and that is literally the balance I'm talking about, finding that space somewhere in between trusting yourself and doubting yourself enough to check everything you do. Yeah, and that's it. That's the whole presentation. You've managed to sit through it all, which congrats and thanks a lot. And yeah, you can still keep in touch. If you want to talk professional, we can talk on LinkedIn. If you want to talk less professional, or you have good photos of motorcycles and cats, or cats and motorcycles, definitely let me know on Instagram. Yeah, that's it. Thanks a lot.
All right, with having the presentation, the talk over, now we can move on to the Q&A session. And I already see that there's one question from the room, so just give me a sec to approach you.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Why not both?
Sorry?
Why not both?
I mean, striking a balance between intuition and insight is kind of like getting the best of the both worlds, right? So
yeah, but I mean, your intuition help you to build proof of concept and go to market as soon as possible, and then you got greatest insights. Insights without proof of concept is, you know, it's only your initial insights, but insights based on data give you the best possible thing. And I, as a product manager, I trust my designers, and I expect that we're going to go to market as soon as possible, and then we're going to have great insights to work further.
Yeah, and that's kind of the problem that I was talking about in terms of recruiting new designers, is that many designers, like, you trust them, but you don't look at their hands, right? You're not observing exactly what they're doing. You don't always know if they're basing their decisions on insight or just their intuition. And the problem kind of with especially a little younger designers is that some of them might get blocked because they don't have the proper insight, so they can't deliver that proof of concept, as you mentioned, as fast as possible. But also, on the other hand, some of them might just do it as, you know, I feel it, this looks nice, this is pretty, so it's gonna sell in a presentation. Yeah, and then it's gonna also, like, the insights you're gonna get from that would be a step that you could have bypassed if it was kind of a little more somewhere in between. Yeah, but that comes with, to be honest, experience and then like work and then again putting yourself out there and kind of thinking about when we can use which. There are situations where we use both, but they're not like super common. It's usually you kind of pick and choose the situation you're in and kind of make the decision again based on experience. Okay.
All right. Any more questions from the room? I see two more.
My question is, how do you convince others, especially the stakeholders, that your intuition is correct?
Very good question. So that's another thing that's always difficult for designers, especially younger ones. It's building yourself as an expert. That's just a skill. That's literally a skill, and people should put it on their CV that they have that kind of ability. Because people don't ask you questions like, where did you get that? If everything works and if you delivered what you needed. But you need to be able to like convince them that you are an expert and they can trust you, right? You don't go when your mechanic, I mean, depends on the person, but when your mechanic like says you need an oil change or something, you don't really go with him to the car and then check exactly what he's doing. Is he actually doing that, etc. I know there are people that do that, but most people don't. Same goes for designers. We're also expert that they need to trust. Second guessing, if it happens, like you mentioned, in terms of stakeholders, and you need to kind of convince them, well, that's kind of a different process to building that trust and the whole thing. Because if it's healthy, they won't be like standing over you and micromanaging and checking if you're using proper insight or intuition. And also if you're doing it properly, so then it's not going to be a problem. Okay.
Okay, I'll allow myself to read one of the online questions. When presenting iterations or decisions to stakeholders, do you highlight which decisions are insight-based and which are data-based?
So this is a very interesting question, and it's going to be context-based, because there is something I've learned when talking with stakeholders or clients, is that we don't really tell them why we are using this type of font or why the button is 56 pixels high, etc. They just need to understand that it works, and then we're focusing on the main parts. And to be honest, where did that come from? That's only a discussion that happens when either something went really wrong, so it didn't work, and now we're kind of, you have to explain, and yeah, then you're gonna have to say either I based this on X data or good practices, or to be honest, I didn't really think about it. I just put it there because it seemed like the proper place, and that's gonna be on you. Yeah, so again, it depends kind of on the relation with the client, but I wouldn't definitely during a presentation say that this was based on X data, or definitely not say this is kind of, I felt that it's a good place, because you're opening yourself to a completely different discussion about everything, basically, right? So they can then second guess all the decisions that have been made. Yeah.
Okay, I've seen there was one more question. Yep, okay.
Hey, it's going to be the open question, actually, because I really love the fact that you mentioned Bauhaus and the design sensibility. And in case of this high-end corporate UI design, what's your opinion? Do you think that there's really like a lot of space for designers to show off with their personality in this high-end UI design, or are we sentenced to actually ride the wave of the trend that's actually hyped, or like a gradient infused, or strokes and border radius, all that bullshit?
So now how it is, it's exactly like you mentioned, it's shit. So basically everyone wants it either to be following that trend, and they say, yeah, other companies are doing it, so we also need to do it. Or they already have something built around, like either, no, I mean, when the design system is in place, that's a completely different discussion. But when they kind of follow that trend, or kind of don't want to give that creative freedom to user, well, I understand when that happens in specific products, like a fintech thing or something like that. Everyone is copying just what Revolut did, and I mean, I get, because the money that is coming through that is pretty big. But again, when Revolut was creating those first steps, they did have like a lot of their own design sensibility, and they open up a lot of doors by research, by doing or using their intuition. And I'm kind of like depressed because by exactly the current situation on the product, because everything seems to be going to a smaller and smaller kind of corridor, and everything seems to be looking like exactly the same. Uber like won the market, so everyone was gonna use the same as Uber, and then in the end we're gonna have a couple of main guys, influencers, let's call it, or I mean it's gonna be companies, not people, but they're gonna be the ones that are can pave the way because they're already big, right? So it's gonna be exactly Uber, Revolut, those big companies that have the money to, and already won kind of their own part of the market, and they're gonna show everyone else where they need to go. That's not really a creative approach, right? That stifles any kind of like proper exploration in terms of weird things. That's why I, to be honest, prefer working with startups which I mean, there is a lot of problems in startup because everyone wants to be the next Uber or Revolt or whatever. So they kind of think they need to follow those exact steps. But there are a lot of cool companies that kind of allow that kind of exploration. I'm just hoping that there's gonna be enough voice in the design community at some point to point that out, to keep saying yeah, this is basically a copy of X and Y because that's what we every time designer shows off a new design. I mean, we see that, right? It's pretty clear that it's just carbon copy of another app that's been more successful in that area, and they kind of want to follow it, right? Or they saw it somewhere else and just took it. I miss kind of that design. That's why I kind of still like branding, because they have a kind of a different approach. They do the opposite, which they sometimes forget that they're creating for a client, and basically everyone is creating something in their own style or with their own vibe. But it would be good if we will be able to meet somewhere in the middle. But that's up to you and the voices that you have to push that kind of agenda in your companies. Yeah, kind of went on a little rant.
Okay, do we have any more questions from the room? I see one in the behind. I'm going.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. My question is, what should one do to feel more confident with intuitive choices?
Very difficult question. First of all, the awareness is key. Because if you are actually designing and using that kind of intuition without thinking about it, well, it's gonna be harder on you to both in terms of selling it and be aware of where that kind of decision came from. How to build it? One of the main things I would say is to show it, because even for instance, you're doing a design in your company and then you have an idea that comes from kind of intuitive. Show it to other people in the company, show it outside of your company, show it to I don't know what kids use these days, Dribble, or I don't know what's on top now. But you kind of want to show it off, and then if the company doesn't take your word for it and they do the whole process and gather the data, etc., and in the end, which happens quite often, the same design is produced, or the same vibe or the same idea is in the end was the correct one, well then you kind of build your confidence on that you kind of found the same solution to the problem without wasting, or maybe not wasting, but putting in like a week or 5 weeks or 2 months, and it happens, and that builds the confidence pretty well. And also, I mean, gather experience. That's do weird things, go around. I've never worked in a company more than 2.5 years. That's like kind of my problem. But that kind of opening yourself to different companies, different industries, really helps building that kind of intuition and confidence in the kind of design decisions you make. Okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the room? I see 2 more. I'm on my way.
Hey. I have a question regarding the process. Do you see nowadays the growing pressure for skipping the process to make it cheaper? And skipping the process means working on intuition, basically. I'm curious whether you see on the projects right now, and what do you do about that?
So right now, yes, because the last couple of months have been, let's say, interesting in the industry, and well, VC capital just basically died. So most of it used to be like, yeah, put in 2 months work and then just get the money and it was fine. Someone could wait for that more money for a while. I mean, it's just someone getting a little richer a little later. But now there is a pressure on. I see that, I feel that myself. That there is. Let's skip part of it. And the problem is, because I don't have a problem with changing the design process or cutting something out or making something smaller or quicker. if those decisions are made by people who actually know what they're talking about. So designers, product owners, people who are involved in the process, developers, people who are involved in the process and know which parts actually can be cut out. The problem is that now I kind of see that stakeholders are cutting up this whole research part, or maybe let's outsource it, but it's going to be cheaper, quicker, etc. I'm hoping, I mean, I'm kind of seeing that there is something good on the horizon. The companies are kind of getting now a little more money. I mainly track it by how many recruiters write on LinkedIn, and it started again happening. But yeah, the last couple of months, kind of that skimming on design was very visible.